Good morning, everyone watching live on BAM YouTube. You can find our YouTube at Now BAM. Let me know in the comments where you are tuning in live from today. The hot sheet covers what you need to know about the real estate industry in a 24-hour time period. On today's hot sheet, I will cover the unexpected drop in listing inventory, as well as the rise in consumer confidence, plus new jobs layoffs that were just announced. Today is Tuesday, January 10th, 2023, and the hot sheet starts now. Yesterday, Housing Wire released their market tracker, their housing market tracker, which they do every single Monday. And they noted a 4% drop in 1 week in housing inventory. This was an unexpected drop. Now, December, typically you will see a drop across all markets in the country in inventory. Around the holidays, end of the year, people will tend to take their homes off the market or decide not to list those homes. This 4% drop last week from the week before was a huge 1 week change with historical data. Traditionally, we do not see housing inventory fall in the month of December. We do see it rather fall in the month of December, However, we clearly saw in the second half of 2022 that higher rates created more days on the market. Inventory was lingering longer. Let me know in the comments if that's the case for your market. During the last 4 weeks, and especially this past week, we are seeing inventory decline even faster than expected. So the seasonal traditional decline that we normally see end of December and beginning of January, as people are getting into the new year, has accelerated. Okay. Now we've also seen, with interest rates since mid-November dropping, that this inventory shortage has continued to increase more than the traditional inventory measurements. Okay. This is common on most markets outside of, say, Las Vegas, certain markets in Texas, obviously Phoenix. These markets might be an outlier where there was so much building, so much expansion over the last couple of years. Most of the nation is underbuilt and wouldn't follow those trends. Okay. To really get an understanding of where we are at right now into the future, okay, because a lot of this is a lagging data. Let's look at the purchase application data, which is included in this tracker. Okay, so they're talking about not putting much weight into the data for last week and the first week of the year because seasonally it's the slowest period. We talked about that. However, though, even with the seasonal decline in volume and the fact that many people don't apply for a mortgage during the holidays, there is something to be seen here because the data line snapped a 7-week positive trend as mortgage rates rose toward the end of the year. So remember, we saw mortgage rates start to come down in November. We had great CPI data. Tune in this Thursday on the hot sheet because we have a new CPI report. We've had 3 months of consecutive good CPI data, Consumer Price Index, where we're tracking inflation closely. In November, we started to see mortgage rates drop. We had about 5 weeks where mortgage rates was dropping. We saw purchase applications week over week for the first time in 2022, second half of 22, start to increase, except for these last couple weeks of the year. We were all the way down to the low sixes, about 6.12 on the 30-year fix. Before we sign off on the show, I'll give you where we're at today. We're at 6.12 at one point in November. Then at the end of the year, rates rose again to 6.5% those last couple of weeks. My apologies there. And we saw that those mortgage applications dropped when we hit that number. Okay. So right here, 6.5%. That's where we're at the end of the year. From 7.3 to 6.12, that's where we saw mortgage applications start to increase. Okay. Purchase application is very seasonal in a standard setting, typically rises over the second week of January through the first week of May, our typical spring season. That makes sense. We're expecting that if interest rates continue to drop as we've seen since the last week of December and early here in January. If we get that in the spring, then we're definitely going to see an increase in purchase applications throughout May. Traditionally, after May, total volume always falls. However, year-over-year data is still critical to keep track of the housing market. This right here, this is the sharpest decline. This is 1 year right here. That's the sharpest decline. If you're watching on YouTube, the MBA Mortgage Bankers Association Purchase Applications Index, this is the sharpest decline in any 1 year, okay? We haven't seen anything like that going all the way back to the last, I don't know, what is this chart here showing us? All the way to 1990. We haven't seen a decline like this one in 1 year going all the way back to 1990 on purchase applications. Purchase applications tells us a little bit more about the future, right? Pending sales is, okay, what's the activity been like the last 45, the last 60 days? Closings is certainly really old data. It's really lagging behind. But when we look at purchase applications, how many people are going to be potentially home shopping over the next 2 months? This is data right now that if you're a real estate agent, a real estate broker, and you're going on a listing appointment, you're going to want to bring up the MBA purchase applications. Hey, people aren't waiting until the end of January or February or March. We're starting to see an increase now in mortgage purchase applications. If you're not ready to list right now, let's track this over the next 4 weeks. We're going to go deep on this on the real word, what this has meant for activity just in the beginning of January. I think from talking to agents and certainly what I'm seeing, the numbers in activity and multiple offers and median price points is going to shock you as you listen to what is potentially a collapsing real estate market. I don't think there's any need to call this a collapsing real estate market like CNN or maybe some of these other national, even Fox or whoever you're listening to on or your consumers are listening to on a national level are likely believing. Okay, so as purchase application data continues to increase, then that would mean we're going to see activity. Now, without the inventory, what does that ultimately mean? If we don't have inventory, but we have purchase applications increasing, and we have a whole bunch of people interested in buying a home, we're likely going to see prices not drop off a cliff or anything like that. We're still sitting at too low of a level of inventory is the punchline here, right? That's where we're not going to see prices get into an affordable level because we've got high interest rates, we've got high prices. We had a double whammy for buyers in terms of affordability unless we start to see more inventory come on the market. Right now, weekly inventory change from December 30th, 2022 to January 6th, 2023, it fell from 490,000 to 471,000. Same week last year, which last year going into the spring, listen, if you remember the spring market of 2022, as Housing Wire says, the tale of two halves for a real estate market. You had the first 6 months of 22 and the last 6 months of 22. We talked about that on the Knowledge Brokers podcast, first episode last Friday. Go check that out. We go deep on that. You certainly had a wild, out of ordinary January through June in 2022. It was ultra competitive for buyers. Logan from Housing Wire says savagely unhealthy. You had 20, 30 offers. People were trying to beat this interest rate hike, okay? And they were doing that with already a low inventory environment because of COVID. And then they were creating even less inventory with all of these purchases. So last year, we had 293,000 to 292,000. Right now, we're at 490 to 471. So you may say, oh, okay, well, inventory is much healthier than it was last year. Okay, well, we are normally in this country used to, when we're looking historically over the trends of the market, we typically will see anywhere from 1.4 million homes for sale. 2 to 2.5 million historically homes for sale is where we want to be. The last existing home report, we have 1.14 million homes for sale. That's where we're at. We're at less than half typical historic inventory in this country. We're on the cusp right now of breaking under 1 million total active listings. And if this happens in 2023, it'll only be the second time in recent history that we went under 1 million active listings. All of the data, all of the pundits that said, you're going to see inventory rise, you're going to see home prices in 2023 drop by 20% because everybody's going to have their house on the market. Early data here out of the gates in January says that the trend is going the opposite direction, that we're actually seeing inventory decline. We're seeing the mortgage rate decline, but yet we're seeing mortgage applications right now increase, which means demand is going up and supply is going down again. That creates an issue to me for affordability. It's interesting though, because there is a UBS study that, and as we switch here to topic number 2 on consumer confidence, okay, we're going to put all the show notes are going to be up for you. Okay. So if you want to grab, that Housing Wire article, you want to grab this CNBC articles, consumer confidence in housing finally rises thanks to falling home prices. We'll put these all in the show notes. These are things that, if you're an attorney representing a client, they're thinking about what to do with an asset, or you're a real estate agent or a broker, and you need to give somebody some advice, or if you're just interested in the housing market in general, all these notes are going to be available to you. So inside this article, there's a video with UBS analyst John Lavallo. They just did a survey. They do a monthly survey on housing. Okay. Listen to this. 39% of respondents plan to buy a home in the next 12 months. This has only been surpassed once, and that was in 2014. This level of respondents to this particular survey that UBS does, and UBS, by the way, very bullish on builders' stocks this year. Okay, so they're going all in that, okay, builders are going to have a big year because we are underbuilt in this country. And DR Horton's their top pick, and they get into some of those in the video. But this 2 out of 5 people saying that, okay, I'm going to buy a house in the next 12 months has only been surpassed once since 2014. So what is that consumer telling you about the housing market in 2023? It's telling you there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of demand, that people want to get out there and buy a home in 2023. 70% of the respondents believe that finding an affordable home would be somewhat to very easy in 2023. Now, some of the dynamics I talked about here in the first topic might counteract that affordability. I don't know what they consider affordable. We're going to get into it deep on the Real Word today, which will be up at 2 p.m. Eastern on this channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you're following the Real Word, and subscribe to BAM. We're going to go into it deep on, okay, what does affordable mean? And what are we seeing in those affordable price points market to market? I don't believe that there's any chance, we talked about this on Knowledge Brokers podcast as well, that you're going to see a decrease in the median price points in whatever town you're sitting in America. Okay. Most people surveyed on this UBS survey believe that, these are homeowners now, believe that in a year from today, their value of their home will be the same. So most homeowners don't believe that they're going to have a loss in equity, that their home is going to go down in value. Listen, homeowners are looking around their town and they're saying, well, there's nothing on the market. Okay. Nobody's listing their house. They're either locked into a low interest rate, they just bought, they're comfortable with where they're at. But ultimately, there's not a bunch of building going on. There's not a lot of inventory in the market, not a lot of resales, and there's just not a lot of inventory. So how is my house going to drop in value when I know that there is still demand for this product and that I don't have competition? If I did put my house on the market, I'd be asking a high price, I'd be asking near peak, and I'd probably likely be getting that number. All right. Also in this report, this is from Fannie Mae, CNBC, talking about this consumer confidence increasing, showed that for the first time in, I think, 8+ months, we saw an increase in confidence from November to December. This overall confidence is still relatively low, lower than it was the 2 years prior to 22. The share of respondents saying now is a good time to buy a home was still low. Okay, so just 21% say now is a good time to buy a home. So now 39% in that UBS survey say, I'm going to buy a house in the next 12 months, but only 21%, according to the Fannie Mae index, say that it is a good time to buy a home. So despite whether it's a good time or a bad time, 2 out of 5 people are going to go out and buy a home. That's up from 16% in October and November. More consumers now believe that home prices will fall in the next 12 months, and more also say they believe mortgage rates will come down. So most people believe that these rates are going to come down. Mortgage rates are still twice what they were a year ago, but home prices have been falling since June, and that's finally making consumers feel better about what has been an overheated, highly competitive housing market. Okay, the share of respondents saying now is a good time to sell dropped from 51 to from 54%, dropped to 51 from 54%, while the share saying now is a bad time to sell increased. Okay, so Fannie Mae, a little bit different than that UBS survey taking a longer 12-month outlook. And certainly, while Fannie Mae's survey is improving, consumer confidence is finally increasing. It is pretty low as it continued to drop month over month. We're going to go deep on that Real World podcast, which will be live on this channel at 2 p.m. today or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're going to go much deeper. There's some core logic stats in there as well as some others, and we're going to hit on all of that. Okay. Now, the one thing, and I've said it in multiple places, that can really trip up any of this good news, and we've had a lot of good news. The expectation is Thursday, when the CPI report comes out, we'll have even more good news, which is going to benefit the housing market. Okay. The one thing that trips us up is how many people lose their job. Jobs report have been really, really strong. Talked about it on Knowledge Brokers podcast and the Wall Street Journal report that in December we had 223,000 new jobs announced. Okay, we're gonna see some unemployment numbers later this week as well to kind of bounce off of these new job reports. But just in the last 24 hours, Coinbase has said they are cutting 20% of their workforce. Coinbase, to me, I would put them in that technology. I wouldn't put them necessarily. I mean, they're Bitcoin, so Bitcoin's been beat. Not Bitcoin, but cryptocurrency rather has been beat to death for sure with SBF and all of that kind of stuff. But they're more of a tech-based company to me, and we know that tech is in a recession. We know that housing has been in a recession for the last 6 months, and we've seen a ton of layoffs in those two industries. I mentioned that on yesterday's hot sheet. Goldman Sachs, though, banking, has announced that they are cutting 3,200 employees as they expect another difficult year on Wall Street. So Goldman Sachs now something to watch in my eyes, more so than tech and housing, which we know those two industries are the two industries in a recession. Goldman Sachs is banking. Are we going to see a hit to banking in 2023? All of this despite Disney telling their employees, get back to the office. You must return to work 4 days a week in the office. So job market seems to be strong in a lot of ways, but then you do hear weekly reports about more layoffs. This is what I'm watching closely in Q1 of 2023. Listen, the Fed has said they want Americans to lose their jobs because it makes their job easier. The Fed is looking for an easy way out. Unfortunately, Jerome Powell has said, yeah, I don't mind if some people lose their jobs. He's not sensitive to the American family going through some pain and losing their income on their job because it makes his job at the Federal Reserve easier. He said that in plain English. So unfortunately, I don't think the Fed is going to continue to help a strong job market, but the consumer is certainly propping up this strong job market and the demand for companies to grow, despite you keep seeing weekly reports on some tech and real estate companies laying off. If this increases in Q1, I think that changes the game. If the job market continues to stay strong and you continue to see, some of this interest with buyers, this demand on mortgage applications and inventory drop, we might be getting into another hot spring real estate market, despite it really adding up to less transactions. I think prices will be very strong if that kind of holds true. We do need more inventory for sure to have a healthier, more normalized real estate market. That remains to be seen. I'm watching jobs very closely. All right, let's check in on where we are on the 10-year. Yesterday, we showed that it did tick up just a little bit. We're currently sitting here at 9:52 a.m. at 3.582. And you can see here, if you're on YouTube, from the last 5 days, this is a decline, which has brought us a drop in the 30-year fixed average. Okay, so yesterday we referenced a 6.2 30-year fix. Right now, as the rates came out late yesterday, it's on average 6.14. We could certainly, and we're going to be using Mortgage News Daily's average numbers, which takes an average, across the board, MBA, Fannie Mae. They take a whole bunch of these surveys throughout the week. Right now, they're sitting at 6.14. A local lender might be a little bit different, might be getting some people into the high fives for sure right now. But are we going to hit on average throughout the country in the high fives? We're seeing some ARMs already in the fours right now. Okay, so there's been whispers of that the last week. This is going to help drive demand. But as we started the show, we're still lacking inventory in a real significant way, in a way that could impact, in my opinion, affordability. Again, I'm going to get into that at a much deeper level when we go through the Real Word podcast later today. I do want to reference yesterday on the hot sheet. If you missed that, go check it out. We talked about the U-Haul study, which is going to be a relevant piece of data, especially if you're a real estate professional, over the next month and maybe even quarter one, especially if you're in one of those towns where people were moving, or rather states where people were moving into as opposed to moving out of. Interestingly enough, yesterday on Twitter, David Sachs from the All In podcast, David Sachs, one of the starters, one of the original founders of PayPal, of course, with Elon Musk. David Sachs tweeted out, just got offered office space in San Francisco for the same price as 2009. Yikes. Elon Musk says it will go lower. I talked about this Compass report yesterday in the hot sheet, where they're trying to sublease 89,000 square feet of office space. Elon Musk Twitter not paying their rent in San Francisco specifically for Twitter, and that 26% of San Francisco's commercial office buildings are already vacant. We've got some more, maybe a fix for this on the Real Word coming up later today as well at 2 p.m. So make sure you are tuned in for that. And that is all, folks. That is your hot sheet for Tuesday, January 10th. I hope you consider subscribing to the channel. We'll see you on the Real Word, 2 p.m. today.